All right. Thanks everybody for joining our webinar today. We'll give it a few minutes and then we will get started. Hi everyone. Thanks again for joining the webinar today. We're going to be talking about actionable insights, how Gannett keeps a pulse on the markets and identifies advertising opportunities. We'll be joined today by Lenny Murphy. Lenny Murphy is the editor, or executive editor and producer of Green Book. Lenny has been in market research industry for 15 plus years in various senior level roles, notably as CEO of Rockhopper Research, CEO of tech-driven startup BrandScan 360, and senior partner of strategic consulting Gen 2 Advisors. He is a key consultant to numerous insight-focused organizations and an advisor to several technology-focused startups. In addition, we'll also have Charlie Helt. Charlie is Director of Research Services for Gannett. Charlie has 30 years of experience in marketing research. He joined Gannett as Director of Research Operations in 2001, following 10 years with Merit's Marketing Research. He has extensive experience conducting media research and large-scale tracking and customer satisfaction studies. And then myself, I'm Dan Fleetwood. I have over 15 years of market research experience and I'm really passionate about the role that software plays in helping businesses. I really believe that software can help companies get better feedback, uncover actionable insights, and ultimately develop better products and services. Before we get into the actual webinar, I just want to share a few housekeeping items. One is feel free to share content and tweet questions using Dan4Communities. We'll be following those on Twitter and answering those questions as they come up. Also, if you have any content that you'd like to share from this, feel free to do that as well. We'll also be setting a recorded version of the webinar following this, so feel free to keep a lookout in your email for that. And if you have any questions, there'll be email addresses at the end, so you guys can feel free to reach out to us with any questions that you have. The agenda for today, so I will be giving an introduction to online communities, just a brief overview. Lenny will be talking about how communities are disrupting the market and why are they so important. He'll dive into that. And then that'll play into Charlie giving a description of how they're using local online communities to support Gannett's business needs. So definitely an interesting discussion there. And then we'll have a few minutes rather at the end for a roundtable Q&A. So we'll be discussing some various topics from each of Lenny's and Charlie's discussions, and then we'll also hopefully have some time to take some questions from you guys as well. All right, well, let's dive right into it. Before we do though, I want to give a spoiler alert of what you'll learn. So you'll definitely learn the following. You'll learn to love the tools and insights online communities brings to your research. You'll learn why online communities are playing such a key role. You'll learn tips and insights on how to keep a pulse on your key markets and customers. You'll learn about identifying advertising opportunities using insights collected. You'll also learn about identifying markets on the upswing and down and trending down in consumer perceptions. And then finally, pinpointing consumer categories where demand is high in general and by the market. So hopefully you find this both educational and entertaining as well. So let's start from the beginning. What is an online community? Well, an online community at its core is a group of customers or those with a shared interest who come together to participate in research. They're oftentimes recruited by the companies or by the research providers to participate in this research. There are many benefits, which we'll get to next, but with member profiling, an online member portal, and an array of tools available, you can get more in-depth and ongoing research over time. So where it's more longitudinal in nature, because you're developing the profile about the member. You can send targeted surveys, do targeted research with them. And this will tie in nicely with Lenny's conversation about, and discussion rather, about why are they trending? What sort of things of interest? Why are things so interesting about online communities that people are using them more and more in their research? And a lot of it is because of the benefits of an online community. You can get your research done quicker. You can save money and budget, which always helps. You can uncover unparalleled insight using a lot of those tools that I mentioned. You have an increased confidence of research results. You can definitely use it for brand promotion, and also greater participation in research because you have these members in your community at the ready to participate, and they see that as definitely a benefit to them. So you'll definitely get better response rates and more participation as well. So with that, that's kind of a brief overview of online communities. And now we'll turn it over to Lenny, who will be talking about how and why communities are so important and how they're disrupting the market. So Lenny, I'll pass it over to you.
Appreciate the introduction. Always a pleasure to be asked to do anything that adds value to our industry, and certainly appreciate being here with Charlie as well. So let's see what I can do to help kind of level the playing field here with a little bit of data and perspective on this. So first, we are in the age of technological disruption, and that counts in the research industry as well. So innovation and research technology is disrupting an industry that's been in desperate need of disruption for a long time. There's not much status quo that's happening in the research industry today, and most of that is driven by the advent of new technologies. So let's talk about what that really means. So first, tech's not the villain, it's the vehicle. So online communities specifically, is there a disruption to the particular qualitative paradigm? Absolutely. But it does more than simply kind of transmitting the qualitative paradigm into an online position. Sorry, my brain's not working right. Within online communities, you get kind of the best of both worlds, of both quantitative and qualitative. You can reach scales that you can't normally do within traditional qualitative research. You get the speed and cost and price efficiencies of that, but you also get unique capabilities that produce more nuance, that allow us to engage with respondents in a different way, doing different things than we would traditionally do. We're not starting out from scratch, we're reinventing the wheel. We're actually taking the best of research and putting it into a new form factor that allows us as an industry to generate more innovative thoughts and more meaningful methods for insight collection. So if we look at the overall paradigm of how research is shifting, the traditional model was really kind of based on limited data utility. Data was very compartmentalized, very siloed. It wasn't particularly scalable. We always functioned with a specific end for quantitative or qualitative research. It was very labor intensive. And communities are part of this shift to an emerging model that is more framework driven. What I mean by that is the idea of how do we incorporate things like non-conscious measurement or behavioral economics or social media analytics, things that can arguably give greater nuance to research. It's around converged data. Communities, again, are a very great way to be able to look at the best of both quantitative and qualitative. QuestionPro specifically integrates with things like Salesforce, et cetera. So we're bringing down those silos of data and allowing those to really be leveraged in new ways. Technology is scalable by its very nature, and increasingly is very automated. So a lot of the labor, particularly around recruitment, et cetera, is now being automated, creating greater speed and cost efficiencies across the board. And we know that this is important because one of the things that we do that you may know me for is for the GRIT study that we conduct twice a year, the Green Book Research Industry Trends Study. And in the most recent edition, earlier this year, we asked about the drivers of supplier selection. And this was a conjoint study. That's why the numbers look a little wonky, because we were looking at their choices. But from a utility standpoint, quality of insights generated is absolutely number one. But tying for number two is speed and subject matter expertise, and pulling right up behind it is price. And then a little bit before that was innovative approach. So communities allow you to get quality insights because you're able to engage with respondents in a deep way, in an ongoing way, and really probe in ways you can't do very well within quantitative, and don't do very well within qualitative because it's usually a synchronous process, and this is an asynchronous method, while getting all those cost and speed efficiencies. So that's why we see communities specifically really growing. And why are those priorities for brands? And I'm sure Charlie will echo this. Well, primarily because it aligns to meeting the business needs, and ultimately that is what research is about. The function of research is to answer questions to help move the needle for the business. If we look at it at a very high level, I always say that the goal of research is to help brands sell more stuff. That's what we do. We are a subset of marketing. And whether that stuff is an ad or a product or a message or an idea, the goal here is to help understand consumers so that we can collect the information to help brands be more successful. So anything from a research methodology that aids that process, that helps brands be able to answer those questions faster than their competitors, better than their competitors, and in a way that delivers more value to their target populations, that's going to be a good thing. And arguably, communities have absolutely done that. And we see that from the adoption. So this is only, again, from the most, this is from Grit last year, not the most recent one. But we ask about the adoption of what we consider emerging methods. And online communities have led that for years. I don't have the trend here, but you can see that online communities really shouldn't even be considered an emerging method anymore. It is mainstream. It is in use around 60% of Grit respondents, and under consideration by the remaining 22%, and interest across the board at the 82%. So, communities are not fringe. It is not something that is folks don't know much about. Like at the lower level, we look at biometric response or sensor research. These are still definitely emerging categories. Communities are mainstream. It is a tool that has reached maturity, and the innovation now is simply about finding new ways to do that to drive more business impact. So, critics claim that we lose components of the consumer context by using virtual tools rather than face-to-face. That's just a bunch of nonsense. The moderator may, so they're losing meaning, credibility, and authority as an anonymous space. Virtual views made it impossible to experience or gauge emotions and capture visual and nonverbal cue. None of that is true. If anything, what we are seeing is that we live our world. We live primarily in an online world. And with millennials and the next generation, that's even more true than it is for folks like me that are of a certain age, right? They're not digital natives. The moderator, a good moderator, can connect through concrete. They do anything. A computer screen shouldn't pose a challenge to capture cadence and familiarity, create a community. Plus, the community capability itself, the technology around it, has so many tools to help enhance the experience. We can combine with facial scanning, so we can capture emotions. There's text analytics to capture emotions. There's the ability for participants to interact with one another and really build community interactions from that standpoint. There's so many tools that can be applied around mosaics and whiteboards and just things that really make the idea of community feel like a community, feel like the things that we would participate in if we're interacting with our own groups in Facebook or what have you, and to mimic, in some ways exceed, the paradigm of traditional face-to-face qualitative research in a far better way. When we think about communities, I bucket it as online quality, even though it has some aspects of quantitative. Consumers really like it because it is convenient, it is asynchronous. At this point, most everybody's familiar with the interactions that occur online in some type of forum or group setting. Feeling valued is vital. Communities almost always are focused towards a specific population that their contribution is important. lapsed customers or new customers or ideation. These folks are really contributing something that they know is going to make a difference in the business. And participation can be highly rewarding, not just financially, but also in a sense of connection. One of the most interesting stories, and I'll digress here just for a second, Diane Hessen, who is probably considered the grandmother, if you will, although she would probably hate that word, of communities, when she found this space back in the early 2000s before QuestionPro even existed. And during the last election, she was asked by the Clinton campaign to use community tools to try and understand both Trump and Hillary supporters. And through that process, she was engaging in a weekly dialogue with both of these populations. And she saw when things turned. She knew that Hillary had lost based on the reaction of both those populations she was talking to on a weekly basis when the deplorables comment came out. And she told them then that there was a problem. And she continued that even after the election. And to this day, she does a series of articles in the Boston Globe where she has continued to be deeply engaged with both these populations on an ongoing basis. And the insights that she has gained, even as something fundamentally predictive around as politics, as well as something as important about our overall political milieu that we live in today, has been amazing. And that's just one very visible example that's been very public about how to utilize the community to drive more value. So, that's great. From a client standpoint, and we'll transition into what Charlie's going to talk about, as we mentioned, you get more for less and faster. It's a highly engaged and interactive experience. I suspect Charlie would agree with me that it's often more rewarding than writing a survey. It allows folks to meet your market. It was really made for millennials as well. And you get the extra value of building brand and making connections with consumers across the board. So that's it for me. I want to see if Charlie agrees with me, but hopefully that foundational piece at kind of a macro level helps set the stage well. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Lindy, very much. That was very insightful. We'll now switch gears to talk about how Gannett keeps a pulse on key markets and identifies those advertising opportunities. And I'm sure, Lindy, that Charlie's going to agree with you on many of those points, as they've seen a lot of the same benefits come through in their research. So without further ado, Charlie, I will let you take it away.
All right, thanks, Dan, and thanks, Lindy. That was really good stuff. And I hate to prove Dan right, but I do completely agree with what you said. That's what we have experienced with our online communities, and particularly that first point of being able to do more, fast, cheap. All those things are important to researchers, as we know, and getting more important by the day. At Gannett, we have newspapers in markets all over the country, and we have communities in 10 of those markets. We utilize our communities in a vast number of different ways. I just want to kind of go over some of the primary ways we do it with you folks today. First is what we call a consumer sentiment study, where we measure consumer perceptions about how residents in our local markets think the national and their local economies are doing, as well as the impact of recent policy decisions, things like tariffs, tax cuts, and those kinds things have on the impact it has on consumer sentiment, and most importantly, maybe likely to purchase products in the near term. We're able to compare across markets and see which markets are more sort of bullish than other markets. We're also able to compare within markets year to year and see which markets are sort of on the upswing in terms of consumer sentiment and which ones are on the downturn. That stuff is all fun and good and sort of engages our communities in a very interesting way. But the real value to us comes from asking about the consumer purchase to intent, consumer intent to purchase, various high-ticket consumer items like homes, autos, furniture, home remodeling, that kind of thing. Comparing these results over time enables us to identify markets that are sort of about to pop for select categories. And that allows us to better plan our B2B sales strategy as it pertains to consumer categories and help us to determine where we have the most potential for ad sales, impact staffing, some of those things. And while it often just sort of confirms what we already believe or know about our markets, it gives us very valuable information and local market insights to take to our key or potential advertising clients. There's nothing better than walking in to a furniture store and saying it looks like consumers in this market are really about to buy a lot of furniture. We see it considerably higher than it was 6 months or a year ago. And then thus you need to step up your advertising to get more of that business. So, but that really helps us have conversations with those advertising clients. And again, helps us internally know where we have the best opportunity. A few more examples of how we're utilizing our online communities at Gannett. One of the key things our communities enable us to do is get really quick reader response to stories and advertising that we run. And Lenny touched on all this, the speed that we can quickly turn things around. If we have a major advertiser who runs a big ad on Sunday, for example, we can send an invite to our community members on Monday and have results back to that client on Wednesday. This provides tremendous added value to our advertisers, and in particular because we maintain a database of norms. So if that local furniture company runs a big ad, we can compare their results from that ad on several metrics like recall, likability, likelihood of taking action, and compare to other similar types of ads, both for other furniture ads and other ads of similar size, use of color, and those kinds of things. For some of our major advertising that are really undertaking large branding campaigns, we can even conduct sort of pre-post studies to measure the bump in awareness they get or whatever the campaign is for. Often about awareness, we'll do a study right before the campaign starts and immediately after, and are able to measure that sort of bump in awareness or whatever their initiative was. Likewise, on the content side, we're able to get reader feedback on stories that we run. And that helps us determine what types of content and most importantly nowadays, the types of storytelling or how the format or how we present those stories to our readers, what they like and what they don't like, and we can better serve our readers in that way. Another example of a value-added service that we're able to provide our key clients, again, our advertisers that we're hoping to partner with, is custom proprietary surveys around their category. And again, the key is this is local insights that is very difficult to get at the local market level, certainly at an affordable rate. It's just not easy to find some of this information, at least in some of the markets where we have our communities. In addition to providing great value to our clients, these studies also help us initiate those conversations with them about how we can help them achieve their goals. So this is where you're at. This is what we're finding. Maybe you're low in awareness compared to competitors, so you're high in awareness, but you're perceived to be low in quality. And we can help them plan their brand strategy and what goals they want to have and help them develop a plan to reach that. And we have internal uses as well. Sometimes we want to test a brand message before we are launching to a broader audience. And the communities give us that, again, cost-effective way of doing a very quick test. We can have results within 48 hours after, or even quicker if we want to do a one-day thing, quickly send out to the community. We usually give it 48 hours. But just running a quick test can help us identify unintended meanings or reactions that we did not anticipate from messages before we, again, release them to a very broad audience. And more, one of the key things we're using our communities for now is sort of concept prototype testing. As we continue to evolve to a digital media organization, we're devoting a lot more of our resources to digital products and service development. We're constantly trying to find what new products and services we can deliver, particularly in the digital space, to keep the readers we have and attract the new, younger, very digital-centric folks. Our communities provide the opportunity to explore consumer reaction to concepts for new ideas. We've used our communities also to not only explore new product ideas, but to recruit for qualitative sessions to kind of further explore and those kinds of ideas, or just test a specific prototype. And since we have a lot of profile information about our communities, we know a lot of demographic information, we know the kinds of platforms they use and prefer, we're able to select a specific demographic or behavior. For example, we want to test a prototype of a new sports app. We can select community members who are interested in sports and use our apps, and recruit only those members for the research. And finally, we use, whoops, sorry, I went too far there, back up. Finally, we use our communities to track consumer behaviors over time. By conducting regular surveys, we're able to follow media consumption patterns and sort of ever-evolving consumer perceptions of the media. And this helps us keep a pulse on that, particularly, again, at the local market level. These studies also provide great variety for our members because it gives them a different way of engaging. And again, we're always constantly, once you get the online communities up, it's critical you keep them engaged on a regular basis and active. So that's just a quick overview of how we're utilizing some of our online communities at Gannett. Any questions? If not, I'll turn it back over to Dan.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, Charlie. One thing that I was wondering is, did you guys see in the media perceptions tracking that you're doing with a lot of the conversation around fake news and so forth? Did you guys see any like dip in trust or anything like that with your media perceptions tracking?
It's a good question. We have seen it become an issue. Actually, we're finding that sort of the long-standing traditional media actually, is getting higher ratings and trust now, and people are seeking us out more because of the concerns about social media and fake news around that. So we've actually found this to be a very positive for us as a well-established media organization, that folks are looking for more of that sort of traditional trusted news source than they were, just a year or two ago.
Right, and I've heard something similar too with a number of people I've talked to say that getting their news from like a newspaper or a more trusted source, the stories are more developed and they have longer, right, to mature as a story rather than kind of the minute news cycle that we see. So no, that's definitely an interesting point. Well, great. So I'd like to kind of turn it over more to continue on to what we were doing of a roundtable Q&A. Lenny, I had a question for you, and this was really going back to what you were initially talking about in terms of, as an industry, we're sort of slow to adopt new technologies, or maybe we're getting better now. But why is it that you think we're kind of slow to adopt these new and emerging technologies?
Is that me or Charlie?
Oh, sorry, you, Lenny. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Or Charlie,
Yeah,
you can weigh in too. But both of
yeah,
you,
Charlie,
curious to get your points.
Yeah, please weigh in. Well, I mean, I think one, it's just there's a human nature is we stick with what we know. Research is probably even a bit more conservative than most. I think by inclination, research is it's almost an insurance type process, right? So I think researchers we're data driven. We want to understand things before we jump at them. We are just more conservative overall. And then third, there's certainly the business model on the supplier side that can be a limiting factor. A lot of the new technologies that have emerged, and even communities to an extent, are disruptive to traditional business models. In some cases, that's a good thing. You actually probably can make more selling communities than you can, let's say, the closest corollary of focus groups. But at the same time, it requires a whole different organizational structure and skill set. So there's a lot of just intrinsic limits that can impact that. I think those are the biggies. And that should mean that we're all going to stick in the muds. I don't think that's the case. But there are some limits built in. Charlie, what do you think? You've been around.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, Lenny. I think also, it's an investment of starting up this and sort of time and commitment to it. And like you say, everybody, we're all slow to change. We're very busy. It's hard to kind of, make that kind of overhaul in the way you're doing research and kind of ramp up for it. And, the last thing you want to do is kind of go in on online communities just, with a toe, because again, it takes some work to build the communities up and the membership and all those kinds of things. And then you want to engage them on a regular basis. So I think, and part of it maybe is resources too, in some cases, again, that initially they may see it as kind of a step up in the resources needed when everybody's busy day to day. But in the long run, it will have benefits, and you'll be able to do much more research in a much more cost-effective manner.
Yeah, I would say that's true too. Like, especially when you're setting up a community, it might be a little bit initially to set up, but you definitely make up for that and more later on in the speed of research you can conduct, what you both kind of alluded to.
Yeah, it's a great throughput accelerator as well. So I would certainly agree that you can get more done with less after you go through the initial build process, and arguably generate greater ROI on the research spend itself.
Right. And then another thing I'm talking to some colleagues about is really talking about why communities have become kind of a go-to method for conducting and gathering feedback. There was thought that it's because of it's more of a similarity on how we communicate today, especially with a lot of the more qualitative type tools. You guys think that is a point in why communities have become kind of a go-to method because of the advent of social media and the rise in popularity of that?
I would say yes. I think that increasingly the answers of who, what, when, where, and how can be answered through a lot of other data sources, some that have nothing to do with traditional research at all. But the answer to why is not. So so I think we're actually entered into kind of a golden age of qualitative, if you will, and I use qualitative loosely, but with this idea of how technology can scale for greater personal interactions to get down into things that may help answer the questions of why versus all the other nouns that I rattled off.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's very, very well said, Lenny. I know in our organization, we have no shortage of data. The data is just all over the place. It's a matter of being able to get your arms around it and understanding it. But the question we don't always know is why, or what do they want, that kind of things, that qualitative exploration that is needed.
Yeah, I've been accused of saying that researchers are the keepers of the why. Well, I'm not accused. I've said that. I'll say it again.
You're on record now, officially. So.
That's it. I'm on record. It's official. And I think increasingly that doesn't mean that we don't need to be data scientists. We don't need to utilize all the other tools that are available to us. But ultimately, it is that why that leads to the now what, and that's ultimately the business decision what it's going to be based on. So I think that's a critical thing that we need to focus on, and communities are one of the best tools in our toolbox to help achieve that.
Right. Yeah. One of the things you said, Lenny, was the goal of research is to help brands sell more stuff. I thought that was actually a great way to put it. I think that's really why. And as we have this discussion about communities, it's obvious that communities can help do that through the speed of the research and so forth. Charlene, you touched on something that I was kind of curious about, in that, you do these advertising studies and the next day you're able to get quick feedback. What would it be like if you didn't have that community to reach out to? What would the process look like as opposed to what's your current process now of going through the online community?
Well, it'd be more our traditional methods of research, which cost money and takes time. So, it would be hit on both of those things. And quite frankly, we wouldn't do it probably for most of our clients. Again, this is something we're often able to add as a value-added service, but it can make the difference between when they're exploring two things. Well, we can actually throw in some research for you too. And because we have the norms, as I said, we're able to do those comparisons, so they really get an idea of how well the ad is performing. And yeah, in reality, we just wouldn't be doing much of that other than the major digital kind of campaigns, you know, that are done sort of national level.
Gotcha. Yep. No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I think we're almost out of time here, guys. Do you have any final things you want to say? Any questions or comments?
So I'll give you a plug, Dan. One last thing. One of the things I'm asked to do often is to look at software, and in my roles as an advisor, et cetera, et cetera. So I look at a lot of solutions in the market, and I will say that one of the things that's particularly impressive about QuestionPro is how you've integrated kind of the best of quant and qual and communities and surveys and integration with other data sources. So if you're looking at a community solution, there's certainly there's lots to look at. Let's be honest, but QuestionPro really does deserve to be at the top of the list, particularly if you're looking at doing a variety of different things. If you're looking for a merger of quant and qual, and to do all types of neat things in both of those scenarios, I would say that it's one of the best solutions on the market. And no, you did not pay me to say that, but you're welcome to send me a check if you want to down. But I'll follow the question. Charlie, was that kind of your experience?
Yeah, so Lenny, I would just concur with everything you just said. The other thing I would add is the customer service that QuestionPro provides, and Dan, working with you, you know, over the years and things. You know, if you're wondering about getting into online communities, I suggest you contact Dan, and he can take you by the hand and help you get started. Again, it's that customer service after we signed on with you folks that I much appreciated, in addition to the great software.
Well, we both just got Chris's present, Stan.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Yeah, keep an eye out. Yeah. Check Amazon. We'll be getting something here soon. No, thank you guys very much. We appreciate that, and always happy to continue to do, you know, be innovative and do new things in both qualitative and quant. So definitely appreciate that. With that, I think we can. This will be all the webinar. I'll give you guys some. For everyone who's listening, I'll give you some contact here. So Lenny, Murphy, Charlie, their email addresses are there along with mine, and feel free to contact us at any of those. Website or Twitter, or also email us at communities@QuestionPro. We're happy to get a hold of you guys. So thanks again. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Lenny, for joining me today on this webinar, and hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.